Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It is me, your favorite professional nerd, Jagger. And then with me, as always, is our Dynasty captain, Jeff Bell. No guest this week. We're in them trenches, and for this episode, our wonderful guy, Jeff Bell here, he went through Keep Trade Cut and he looked at value discrepancies that we disagree with, and we're going to talk about them. So you have a custom Jeff Bell ran sheet here, guys. I'm super thankful for him to do this, and I am a little bit of a control freak. So Jeff, thank you for getting this done. The first guy we're going to talk about is Josh Downs. He is wide receiver 33 on Keep Trade Cut. I don't know why I put it like that on the show sheet. Ignore that. Are you too high or too low on? Are we too high or too low on Josh Downs?
I believe that the Keep Trade Cut value of wide receiver 33 in Dynasty is too low on Josh Downs. I think that when you're looking at his profile, you've got a second-year player that really, I wanted to pull some things here really quick. You look at over what he's accomplished as a Colt. He's nine targets, I believe, in something like 5 of his last 7 games. And he's been above 60 yards almost every single week. And Michael Pittman is almost the exact opposite, where he's hit 9 targets 1 week this year. And I think you've seen a flip where you're seeing Josh Downs overtaking Michael Pittman as the wide receiver 1 for the Colts. And Josh Downs since week 5 over his last 4 games, total in fantasy total is wide receiver. Oh gosh, my filter is all messed up here. Oh, Jag, I'm sorry, buddy.
You're okay, dude. You got it. But while you're filling in, I agree 1,000% with you. Like, he's an elite target earner. He's been that since he was at college. If you follow reception perception, I thought the most interesting thing about his profile is that Josh Downs, and I saw this on his film before I even read that, had the best and out of his class, which was Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, he was the best red zone threat. And he was only 5'11". Like, he's a really athletic dude and knows how to use his body. And I think he got the slot tag and then he fell and then he got a little bit of stank on him.
Yeah, and if you look back since week 4, he's been a top 10 wide receiver in redraft since week 4. And that week 4 is going back a little ways. And so when you've got a second-year player that has produced at that level, especially given the questions around the quarterback situation for the Colts, why is he wide receiver 33 in Dynasty? He should be much, much higher than that he's producing at that level, and the way that we're seeing him shuffle the target tree with Indianapolis and become that primary receiver there.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I had someone, I'm getting Josh, in Dynasty, when you got the goods, I bought up Josh Downs and I kept buying him up. You've heard me talk enough on this show that I will buy a good player regardless of situation, because I figure eventually it's going to work itself out and I will benefit. Shout out to Kyle Pitts, baby. He's the perfect example of that. And now I'm getting these doo-doo trades where everyone, I had someone's like, you can have Michael Pittman if you give me Josh Downs and a third. I was like, and a third? I was like, come on, buddy. This is one of the rare occasions where I call someone out in the chat. I was like, will you guys at least pretend I do this for money? It's just for a little bit.
I always like to ask the question of what's your thought process here on this offer, and it's usually is pretty effective because you'll usually get a BS answer back.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff always teaches me the cordial office passive aggressive HR friendly way to do stuff, where I'm just I'm one sorry Joe away at any moment. A big buy Josh Downs. And to be honest, I think this value won't hold long. So the question now is, what is the overpay for Josh Downs? What's the limit you're paying for? I think I'm willing to pay, if you need a wide receiver and you're looking at next draft to get a wide receiver, I would pay a first for Josh Downs, knowing that.
Yeah, he's the type of player that I would be willing to talk about giving up a first because, I don't want to give up a first for a 29-year-old wide receiver because I think I can win the league. I want to give up a first for a Josh Downs in his second year that I believe is an extending player that's a little bit devalued by the market. and can be an immediate contributor for me. And so it was big. I was able to do the Dynasty show with our friend Heath Cummings at CBS last week. And I said, my biggest buy is Zay Flowers right now. And he went off and scored 2 touchdowns. But there I talked about using a first and some other pieces to go out and get Zay Flowers because I view him as a building block for my future moving forward. And that's the same thing with Josh Downs, where you're getting a second-year player, ascending player that has been very productive this year. And I believe that will roll forward.
That's exactly the right process. If you're going to overpay, at least do it, or whatever you think an overpay is, at least you're going to do that for a young asset that has a chance to work itself out. And you're not doing that. Let's put it like now. We talked about this in like the football guys work homie group chat. You think about Tyreek Hill. Let's say you bought Tyreek Hill hoping that he's going to come back fine. You have to ask yourself, is he cooked? And someone's like, well, he's injured. He doesn't look right. Okay, he's only got 1 or 2 years left. If one of these is he's gimpy, this is how it starts. It's to me, it's the bigger risk here. So I'm willing to overpay. And like my love for Zay Flowers. If you follow me on Twitter, if you know it, I'm the biggest Zay Flowers guy out there.
Closing point on Tyreek Hill there, we're at a point where if he doesn't turn around the second half of the season, you're going to see a significant decline off his dynasty value this offseason. And he's not going to have an opportunity to
not going to get it back
offseason, and he won't get it back.
Yeah. I agree. Jalen Waddle too. Let's finish it off here. Like that's someone where you're eating a lot. I'm glad he's one of those players I almost had queued up and I was about to click the button and someone else got him. And I think what could have been, and I feel pretty good now that I missed out on that. So
I have some opinions on Jalen Waddle, but we'll get to that at the end of the show.
Okay. Noted. On that, we'll pay some bills. If you like this kind of content, hit that like and subscribe button. We're making a few little tweaks to the show here and there. We're going to get into our rookie content because a lot of you guys are going to start to rebuild. You're going to start to buy picks. So we're going to teach you what those picks are and what you're potentially buying. So hit the like, subscribe button. If you have any trade questions, go ahead and hit those in the comments. We're about to have a Black Friday sale as well on footballguys.com/plans. We'll have details on that coming up in the following week, as well as rookie content there. Jeff has the Dynasty Roundtable that he does. He does multiple massive data dump basically on Monday. It's a massive article. Go check that out. Now we're going to go to your other guy here, Wan'Dale Robinson. This guy has so much stank on him. And right now on Keep Trade Cut, he's a wide receiver 51. And survey says that you think he's still high, that he's still too high.
Yeah, right now I would be a little bit surprised if you could get wide receiver 51 value for him. I think that early this season, there was definitely a window where there was a lot of excitement around Wan'Dale Robinson. And, I was victim that I fell into the Daniel Jones trap a little bit. And Daniel Jones looked pretty competent. And really the reason for a lot of that was Malik Neighbors. The problem now that you're seeing is Malik Neighbors ADOT has fallen out of the bottom. And it's because I think a lot of it's due to Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, being out for the season now. And so you lose an all-pro left tackle. You're shifting the offense. Daniel Jones isn't able to attack as far downfield as he was before early in the season. And so you're not getting Malik Neighbors attacking at all 3 levels like he's capable of doing. You're treating him basically in the same way that Wan'Dale Robinson was being treated, which leaves nothing on the bone for Wan'Dale Robinson because we know he's a guy that can't win downfield, and he doesn't do that in the NFL. And so what do you have with Wan'Dale Robinson? And again, I don't know that you can move him anymore because there's so much stink around the Giants. But if you were able to capitalize on that value early in the season, good on you. Otherwise, I mean, you're kind of hoping that hype train catches up again because long term, I don't see him being the wide receiver 2 next to Malik Neighbors. I see him being a situational gadget type player. And I think that's, you kind of buy or sell the narrative that currently surrounded him early in the year.
Yeah. I think Dayball will still be there. Joe Shane, the answer's still out on him. I know Daniel Jones will probably be gone at this point. But I think you're hoping that Theo Johnson takes a step forward. I would say flashed. He's been there.
He had a
He does
touchdown
have
this
a
week,
real
so
yeah, he got a touchdown. Like I said, he's doing things, and tight end is slow usually. We've been really lucky here lately with some very special prospects, but that doesn't normally happen. Um, so you're hoping that either he takes a step forward, or in the second round, second or third round, if there's a wide receiver, or if you could get, depending on who's in free agency, you want someone else for whoever's going to be the quarterback there, as well as getting someone else across from Andrew Thomas. So, yeah, I mean, we had people in our comments, because I think we've said to sell Wan'Dale Robinson like a long time here. Everyone was just talking about targets and ADOT, and guys, this is why we watch film. This is why we make the big bucks. Not I'm not trying to. I'm just being serious. When you watch the film, that's just the usage. You just know what's up. Anything else before we move on to Courtland Sutton?
yeah, I just think it's interesting where the Giants have positioned themselves, because I would be surprised if they are not dipping a toe into the draft for a new quarterback. I mean, we certainly saw they really wanted to do that last year. They've got the cap space to go out. Darius Slayton's going to be a free agent. Maybe they love Darius Slayton, want to keep him around. They could get really involved in this wide receiver market, where a guy like T. Higgins or a guy like Chris Godwin, somebody like that, to go out and really give a complimentary second piece to Malik Neighbors, take advantage of that rookie contract and advantage of a potential rookie contract for a quarterback too.
Yeah, I think the next rookie draft is a little shallow at wide receiver. So getting like T. Higgins, actually, that sounds great for whoever is
A lot of fun.
whoever. Yeah, to me, that'd be the ticket there. I'm a big fan of Shadur Sanders, and if whoever I'm the GM, I'm doing whatever I can to trade up and get him in the building, just because I think that's a decent market. If
Deion's going to control where he goes, and
I think, and you think Deion's smart enough to avoid the Raiders? Do you think he is?
yes, I think they're smart enough to avoid the Raiders. To me, the Giants seem like a very logical destination
It
for,
makes some Malik Neighbors goes there, big market, big money, like that.
yeah,
That's where,
well-run, respected organization with the Mara family that
yep.
feels like an ownership group that you would be willing to step in. And Sanders, I think, is the biggest thing, would be the ownership group that he would look to be involved with.
Stick around, guys. We're gonna have rookie content here, and I'm pretty sure Sanders is gonna be a giant. I'm happy Jeff agrees. The next guy we got here on your list is Courtland Sutton. He is attached to Bo Nix, and he's been a decent player most of his career. Keep trade cut. He's a wide receiver 60 after Wan'Dale Robinson. So obviously, you think he's a buy, right, Jeff?
I absolutely do think he's a buy. And a lot of it is you're seeing the emergence of Bo Nix, and you're seeing Bo Nix look like a competent quarterback. Over the last 3 weeks, Courtland Sutton's been a top 10 receiver in redraft. And so that's where, especially this time of the year, I'm looking at who is producing in redraft and where they valued relative in Dynasty, and especially a player like Courtland Sutton. He's going to be the primary target earner on the Broncos for at least this year, probably next year. Who knows how long that plays out? And like you said, he's finally put the pieces together with Bo Nix, and Bo Nix has that offense humming, and that has allowed Sutton to be a top 10 option over the last 3 weeks. And I don't think you have to pay a top 10 receiver option, especially given the market where we're seeing so many wide receivers injured and so many wide receivers out, that this is a great opportunity that if you've already positioned yourself to be a contender and maybe you're light in your receivers or hoping some players come back for the playoff stretch run, Sutton can be an immediate contributor that increases the depth of your overall starting roster.
Yeah, I got a roster specifically that has Drake London and Chris Olave and Michael Pittman. So like whatever I could get Courtland Sutton for, that feels pretty. Maybe Michael Pittman sounds pretty nice if I could sell Michael Pittman plus for Courtland Sutton. At the end of the day, what's the difference? So yeah, I agree with that. And I definitely think it's a big value play, especially now. If let's say you're a win now team, you could get him relatively cheap, and you can flip him probably for more than what you paid him for if this trend continues, or at least get the same value back. So it's a really value insulated market move to go get Courtland Sutton, because like we know he's not a bad player. We just thought that the Broncos were like the terrible Shadow Realm bad, and now we've seen them just play significantly better, and he's attached to a rookie, and we know how crazy we get with some of these rookie plays. So
Yeah, I absolutely love that point that you made there. And really a lot of this list, but a lot of my view right now in general, and I was talking to our friend Herms we had on a couple weeks back, I was kind of about where your view should be right now in the calendar. And what I'm looking for is trends over the last 2-3 weeks that are starting to stack that run contrary to narratives that were set in early in the season, because I think that that's where you're going to get value out of it. That's where you're going to get some of your league mates that maybe they were paying a lot of attention the first 4 or 5 weeks, and maybe they've started to fall off a little bit or decided play like Zay Flowers. Mentioned him again. There was a lot of views around Zay Flowers that he was a boom bust wide receiver 2 type. And if you looked back at the trailing production over the last multiple weeks, he's the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore. He's heavily targeted. He just hadn't had the touchdowns. Gets those in that Denver game, and now he's popped onto the radar for everybody. And that's really what you're looking for. Another player like that. 2 weeks ago, Josh Jacobs going into the Jaguars game, he had stacked 90 to 100-yard scrimmage games week after week, but just didn't have the touchdowns yet. Goes out, scores 2 touchdowns against the Jaguars, and then soars up the value charts. And then we're really look for the player that is due for a spike week that just hasn't had the spike week yet. And then when it happens, it's going to shift the value.
Yeah, guys, it's essentially this is why we say positive regression. A lot of people say that that's fake. It's not, for a reason. It's when we say touchdown cologne or something like that, but you still need a little bit of that cologne to get your maximum value, and not getting touchdowns is just as much as an outlier is getting too many. So especially like it's kind of just playing the obvious thing. If Zay Flowers, depending on what you thought of him in pre-draft or what your process is, which is me as film, if he has a profile of an elite target earner and he's attached to a good quarterback, I figured it's going to figure itself out. It's not like we're dealing with the Raiders right now where you're really worried or say like Chris Olave, player that I objectively like, but he's stuck in New Orleans and who knows they are, especially after firing a head coach. Anything else before we move on?
No, I'm good there.
Next one on our list, we have Kimani Vidal. Keep trade cut is right as running back 49, and that did we just raise him up and like forget to move him? Like we had the one game, we're like, oops, confirm our priors, and then just like forget.
He had one play. He ran a wheel route that you just snuck out of the backfield uncovered and caught the touchdown on it. And like that was the confirmation everybody needed. He's really been phased out of the offense over the last couple of weeks. They really gave him the opportunity, I think that first week especially off that one play that we mentioned, to solidify himself as the running back 2 as a complement to J.K. Dobbins with Gus Edwards out of the lineup. And they've really shifted the snap counts way back and the opportunity way back towards J.K. Dobbins, because Vidal outside of that one play hasn't shown anything at all. Now you've got Gus Edwards that is due to come back very, very soon off IR. He's eligible to come back soon. He'll come right back in and be that running back 2 for the Chargers. And there's talked about doing that show with Heath. I was on the show with Heath, and Heath was doing his normal fantastic job of hosting, and I'm seeing the comments, and somebody was asking about who would you stash between Trey Benson, Blake Corum, or Kimani Vidal, and like their replies to him were Vidal, and I felt like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar when he's like screaming behind the bookshelf. It was like I couldn't say because like that's not where the show was, but at the same time I'm like, why are we telling people to have Vidal over Blake Corum and Trey Benson? What's going on here? But I do think that we're going to talk about it, especially here this week. We're going to start to talk about this rookie class. I would be shocked if the Chargers do not go out and add a running back in this rookie class. I mean, you're seeing 2 guys come out of Michigan, that Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullins have different levels of hype with them, but it wouldn't shock me if either of those players ended up a Charger or the Chargers go a different direction. Vidal is a day 3 pick that had a little bit of buzz, that got an opportunity and didn't do much with it. And I think long-term building, I don't know that they would count on him as a building block, especially as a player that he was behind in camp and he really just kind of turned it on. He might have gotten cut had he not turned it on.
Yeah. Vidal's he's one where he went to like a bowl or he's a name, everyone watched the film of the 2 guys, 3 guys who are actually good. And there's like, hey, here's this dude who plays in a weaker conference. Cause like everyone's like Vidal, Vidal. And I think he scored like the guys in the 70s on my score, they can be all right in the right situation, but like they're not normally good bets, especially if they don't test well and stuff like that. So it's just crazy the dynasty brain that we always, no matter what we say, like you buy them books and buy them books, they still look at the pictures. You tell them it's like day 3 picks, especially if they don't test well. Just because there's opportunity doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Let's say like all those people who are upset because of Zamir White, they're like, look what he did at the end of the season. I'm like, yeah, man, when you hammer him into the back of a mediocre line, eventually you're going to break through and get some stuff. That doesn't mean that you're a great player. So it's really, guys, just look at these outliers like this. What has Vidal done beyond one play?
Right. And when you kind of look through this keep trade cut list that they do a good job of putting together, you're seeing Blake Corum and Ray Davis that are valued right around Vidal. And those guys, I mean, Corum is a higher upside player. He's a higher ceiling player in a situation that can be a quote unquote league winner. Meanwhile, Ray Davis is dropping massive plays every single week. And so if you're telling me that Vidal is in the relative ballpark of value of Ray Davis, one, I don't believe you, but two, then use them to flip to Ray Davis.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Next one on your list here is Mike Gesicki. Right now he's a tight end 21, and he looks like every
30.
bit of the players, 31, excuse me, tight end 31. And he looks like every bit of the player that we thought he could be because he's athletic. Obviously, you think he's a buy, right?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think he's a buy and a play if T. Higgins is out of the lineup. If T. Higgins is not out of the lineup, we saw a massive explosion really the last 2 weeks, and we saw him go for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns this past week. And then you dive into the snap shares and the usage, and he was basically a part-time player that's splitting slot snaps with Trey Irving and Kendrick Pryor. And it's just like, who, what? And that's interesting to me. We saw the injury for Eric All. I think if you can buy him at tight end 31 value, I would be surprised, one, but I would do it because I think that there is a window here to definitely increase that. But at the same time, on the opposite end, I think it's a great opportunity to sell Mike Gesicki in a lot of leagues because of the hype off that. And you add in the injury to Eric All, I think kind of changes the sightline of people. And again, we saw him make big athletic plays like we've seen Mike Gesicki do in the past, but we've also seen Mike Gesicki disappear in the past. And I was concerned to see him really like a third of the time part-time player versus the production that we saw out of it. I would have expected that to be a little bit different. And with Eric All out, Drew Sample picked up those inline tight end snaps. So you're really keeping him as just a marginal slot player that has had a couple big weeks.
Yeah. So is he like a Schrodinger's like tight end at this point? Like he's
I
both
think
a
so,
buy
yeah.
and a sell. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Relative
it's
to value of the way he's going to be treated, he is both a buy and a sell.
yeah. So buy him at cost, but look for a value spike and then flip him and make money. And this is I know, again, like just to talk to the people in the comments, you're like, all these guys tell you to buy a player then sell him. That's the game, guys. That's dynasty. This is the whole point that you play dynasties or fantasy. That's how you acquire value. That's how the world works. That's how an economy works. You buy things low and you sell them high, and then you maximize your value on whatever that product is at the end of the day. Like I said, with me and Jeff, we won't just give you dynasty lessons. We will give you life lessons and financial lessons. Buy stuff cheaper, that sell it for more than you bought it, and you should be happier in life. That's the whole goal.
Yeah, and I've seen some comments where, and I've seen some comments, but I've seen some comments where people will say, "I like these guys. They tell me to buy the players after they've done something good." And we're looking at relative value, trying to set a standard of what might consensus be, and in your specific league, you're going to have players that maybe Joe went to Ohio State and he is just a massive Buckeye fan and he will overvalue Garrett Wilson or whoever you try to sell there. Or, maybe Ted went to Michigan and hates Ohio State, so he's not buying Buckeyes, period. Every single league is a microeconomy. And so you might run into a situation where somebody's seeing this as an opportunity to flip Mike Gesicki because they've wanted to flip Mike Gesicki for 4 years. And you can buy it this window because they're thinking that they are getting value because he is producing now instead of being treated as a random nonsense throw-in player. But it also creates opportunity for that value to continue to rise higher. And that's a lot of what these players that we're trying to look for.
Yeah. And like, again, guys, sometimes it's like they did something good, so they say they'll buy. Well, sometimes they've done something bad a long time, like, and people just forget, and you put up a notice on things. Like I think I've said this or been on this rant before. We know everybody who's everybody, see a lot of stuff. Don't assume value because you, like Joe said, or like Jeff said, you live in a micro economy, and like naturally you might only know 50 people, and there's a big world out there, the people that play Dynasty, and they'll do some crazy stuff. I asked for trades, and on Twitter I'm like, why would you do that? Or I wouldn't do that. And there's some, and like you see people that back it up, and then you start questioning yourself. So we got one more tight end on this episode, Jonnu Smith. Boy, is he a frustrating player, but I think he's done his job, and right now he's the tight end 35 on Keep Trade Cut.
Yeah, and I think he's interesting because we started talking about Tyreek Hill and started talking about Jalen Waddle, and I think people have caught on to the Jalen Waddle side of Jalen Waddle's not Jalen Waddle, but I don't know that they've necessarily caught on to the reason why. And some of that is obviously Devontae Chan. Some of it's Jonnu Smith, and some of it's Jonnu Smith emerging as the wide receiver 3 de facto for this Miami offense. And you're looking at an opportunity where he's got a week to week top 12 tight end ceiling valued at tight end 35. That seems really low to me. And especially this is the type of player who knows what the future is going to look like in Miami with Mike McDaniel, and the seat might get really hot if the Dolphins continue this type of season that they're on. But one would think if they get this ship righted a little bit, the efficiency is going to increase off the offense, which will help Jonnu Smith. But Mike McDaniel might look for some more creative opportunities to involve Jonnu Smith because he is that type of athlete, is that type of player. And so I think that it's meaningful that he's become the wide receiver 3 in this offense that has been searching for a wide receiver 3 for years. And that's a big part of it. The creativity potential for Jonnu Smith that really is not tapped right now is another part of it. And I just think it's an opportunity if you're really truly buying him at tight end 35 in some of these deep leagues, especially some of these tight end premium leagues where you do get that little bit of an extra bump that you're starting 10 or 11 players every week. I mean, he's at very minimum a bye week starter, if not more.
Yeah, and I have a much higher than that. Like I'm this week I got to go through all my rankings and clean stuff up. Uh, he was Isaiah Likely before it was cool. If you really think about his profile, he was a hyper athlete, decent. He's a much better blocker than Isaiah Likely is. And then moreover, you heard Mike McDaniel talk about him in the offseason. You go check the coaches index on it. They liked him because he's a yak guy. He could play underneath and create for himself. And because he has that H-back role, he's a very mobile player, especially in the outside zone scheme that Mike McDaniel uses. He's the ultimate player. He's both like he's like Juszczyk and George Kittle clone, if you really think about how he's being used. And I'm not saying he's as good as a tight end as George Kittle, but I mean in the usage and the role that he's in. So it's no surprise. So if you need like a discount tight end, and this is a good contender buy, if you are really hurting, this is a good boom bust player that I like, especially in best ball. If you're like in a best ball dynasty league, he's the guy that you want here. I know, like we're talking about best ball mania. One of my teams that's still alive. I don't know if it's going to do anything, but it's still alive. It has Jonnu Smith in it, and homie's done enough to get in my lineups.
Yeah, and you make a really good point there. And if you're going as a contender right now, and you don't have, like, this is an opportunity to look for players like Jonnu Smith that maybe you've got like a Devonta's Walker or somebody like that, like sitting on your bench that had a little bit of hype that's done very little as a rookie, or you're looking at them as a potential roster clogger. This is a good time to go out and flip those types of players to basically augment your depth, because depending on if you have a trade deadline or not, that's an entire episode that we could do on trade deadlines or not. But if you do have a trade deadline, you don't want to get into the semifinals or the championship in week 17 and you've been riding a top tight end and now that player is out and your pivot is Grant Calcaterra as the tight end 2 or the Eagles or something to that effect. Backfill some of these positions with some of these, especially some of these younger players that you're ready to give up on for some of these boring producing veterans.
Yeah, I agree. And especially think about Dak Prescott just got hurt. So Jake Ferguson, what is his upside really with Cooper Rush? I would get someone like Jonnu Smith if we don't see Jake Ferguson get it together or something like that. So, really tight end. We said it was deep, and they were like, "Oh no, it's actually just all bad." And then now it's actually deep again. I think because Hunter Henry's someone else. I just wrote a roundtable for Fantasy Life with Cooter Doodle, and I said Hunter Henry, as long as Drake May's there, he's a borderline tight end 1 because he's the most consistent target on that offense. That'll do it for this episode. We'll have we're going to talk rookie running backs on the next one, the 2025 class. And then we're going to have our trade episode at the end of the week here. With that being said, as always, I'm Jagger May and that's Jeff Bell. Love you guys and we'll see you next time.